my games, most of my favorite 2D games actually come from the 16-bit era. Back then I was playing, I think, Sonic 3 and Knuckles, and back then the games were a lot simpler. So, I mean, if you compare it to, games like Gears of War and all that kind of stuff, it's a lot simpler, but the graphics are also a lot simpler, but the games have a lot of different world from stage to stage, and at the end of the whole thing, you feel like you're going through a very big adventure. Comparing it with AAA titles today, they have all these 3D fancy graphics. I think it's harder for them to make every single level completely different, you see. But back then, for me, the games were much more fun in the sense that the visuals are very different from one to another. Well, I think the recent one I played was the recent game that I played most was Spelunky. It was also an indie game. Also about a cave explorer and all that kind of stuff. I played that game halfway through development of my own, which share a similar theme. So I mean, the game has fantastic controls and everything like that, and it has largely inspired me and to work on for ideas for my next game, actually, not the one that I previously released. Things like going even more hardcore than it was. Right now all the games are going easier, casual, and all that kind of stuff. But that game actually made me want to do more hardcore games, harder, and back then when you have all the instant death and that kind of stuff. Yeah. Essential ingredients, I think. Well, for me, since I'm doing indie game, most of the time people are talking about creativity, new ideas and stuff like that. But of course, those are extremely important and all. But I think for me, most of the time I make sure that my game, I have a lot of time for myself to polish the game. Creativity is like the first thing that you realize, set the game apart. But when it goes into the game, I think it's how polished the game is that gives you hang on to the game, play it for another hour or two, so tight controls, stuff like that. The whole idea was to make it not exactly new. It was a game to pay tribute to the whole 16-bit era itself, So the idea was to bring back lost element. When games progress from 2D to 3D, a lot of old genre were actually forgotten and all that. And I think a lot of elements shouldn't be forsaken. And so when I made the game, I tried to bring back all these retro elements. Like the warp environment, you walk out from the right side of the screen and actually appear from the left side of the screen, stuff like that. The game can work without it, but it brings back all the memory from the past. So even all the visuals and all that kind of stuff, I think the difference here was actually to not just make a game that is different for the sake of being different, but the idea of bringing things back again, tribute to the 80s and the 90s. No, I am actually an artist rather than a programmer. I think most game developers are actually from programming background, but for myself, I actually know nuts about programming. So my games, in this case, I focus a lot on the artwork. So for me, what my educational background actually affected the game is to make simple game, but at the same time it has to be smart enough and tons of artwork. The team is around we have three programmers, two programmers, and then 2 artists and musicians. So that's like 5 of us. And The workflow, we have a lead programmer, so I'm the artist and so-called producer myself, so I have to go back and forth, throwing around ideas, and instead of being able to experiment my own ideas, I actually have to go through with them to make sure that the idea is something workable before we can try things out. As we know, quick prototyping is extremely important, so we end up going back and forth. So I try to create artwork I try to create games that center around beautiful artworks, rather than very complex gameplay. And I think that case works well for us because when it comes to indie games, right, you don't want to make too complicated stuff. The player get lost, or if they want complicated stuff, they can spend their $60 and get their Xbox game or PlayStation games, stuff like that. The art style was pretty straightforward. From the start, we knew that we wanted to make a game that is a whole tribute to the whole 80s and 90s game, the 16-bit era, like I mentioned. So we went for pixel art, the one where you have to draw the characters dot by dot and all that kind of stuff. Most of the games, they have very beautiful landscape, but ours, we have to make it slightly more graphical. The game has to be made out of very obvious tiles, so that we can duplicate stuff and make use of the fact that it is graphical, that it still look nice, and still able to construct the image of what we were trying to show. For example, we were to draw small little rocks, to form up a whole cave, and then we just duplicate it all around. As an artist, the hardest part was the amount of artwork that I have to come up with, because the other artist that is helping me out was working on very minimal stuff, just the animation for the main character. But I alone have to come up with the rest of the stuff, so that's quite a bit because we have all the cutscenes. I'm trying to push for like as many cutscenes as I can. At the same time, I have to change the style. If you realize the cutscenes is in a different style with the in-game graphics, so I won't actually be using the graphic there. And the in-game graphic has to be drawn and then put into the game to try out before we know if everything is working. So with only one artist working at a time, I had to go back and forth. You do it in animation sense, it makes sense, but when you throw it into the game, sometimes it slows the game down and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, this is the part that really made me lose my hair and all that kind of stuff. I'm working on a survival shooter game. It will be it's a slightly bigger game, and I'm hoping that this is gonna be my next big game from my last. I'm trying to. It's gonna be on Flash, so. But it's all in really early development stage. We are still in the designing stage, prototyping and all. So yeah, that's pretty much what I know about the game myself. But it's something that I aim to finish by October or November. Yeah.